Before we get into the details of setting up a black hat or gray hat type campaign on Google Maps or with Google Local, I want to talk about some general strategy things that are really important for you to have in your mind. I really want to encourage you, even if you're experienced in this stuff, to not skip this video because I get these kinds of questions all the time. And it's usually because people have skipped some of the bigger picture stuff and they don't really know the direction they're headed with their black hat project. So whether you're setting up just a few listings that are, where you don't have an actual address, or whether you're doing a massive nationwide maps campaign, whether you're doing lead gen, or whether you're setting it up for your own business, you really need to keep these things in mind. And the first thing is keyword popularity, and by what I mean by that is how many people are actually searching for the keywords in your target market. And I'm not going to get into the details of how you determine keyword popularity, but let me just say it's not the same as a national organic SEO campaign. It's different because local changes everything, even as far as how many people are searching. So you need to know where are people sitting when they're searching for your keywords and how many people in different cities are searching, which cities have the most searches for the keywords in your target market, what are they actually searching for and stuff like that. So I'm not going to get into the details about that. It should be obvious, but it's something people skip all the time. People skip the question, is anyone searching for this? And if you're dealing with local or with maps, it's also the question is anyone searching for this in the target city? And if so, how many people? And what keywords are they using? And do the keywords match the category? These are the questions that you need to be asking. And you can watch the videos that we have in the members area here about keyword research. Don't skip this part. It's very important. And that's pretty much all I have to say on that because the videos will tell you the rest. But let me just say, make sure people are searching for what you are targeting. Otherwise, you're going to do a lot of work. You can get all kinds of stuff out there on Google Maps or whatever, and then in the end, you're not going to have anyone searching for those things. I've done it myself, moved too fast, skipped over the keyword research part, and in the end I regretted it because there wasn't anyone searching for this wonderful campaign that I had set up on local. Second thing is customer value, and this goes hand in hand with keyword popularity because if you have a super high profit margin business, you don't need a lot of searches in order to make a good profit for that keyword. So this needs to be considered along with keyword popularity. And so what I mean by customer value is over the lifetime of a customer, how much money, and even more importantly, how much profit is that customer going to supply you? Very important, okay? If you have a super high customer value, in other words, if what the person is buying brings you a profit of $10,000, really, one sale per month is fabulous, right? And so you don't need a lot of searches to make it worthwhile doing a campaign in a market like that. Now, if your customer value, if what you're getting, the profit you're going to get per sale is $15, you're going to need a lot of searches to make that worth it. Okay? So make sure you're considering those two things. Even if you're doing lead generation, how much are you getting paid per lead? Is it $100? Is it $1? Makes a big difference. And then is there sufficient searches, again back up to the top, the keyword popularity, are there sufficient searches when you add them all up to make it worth even bothering with? Okay, and the third thing is the general competition level. And this is huge. I'm going to talk about this for a while because on Google Maps or Google Local or whatever you're working with, there is a huge difference between different markets depending on the competition level. There are a few really important things that come into play as you're thinking about the general strategy of a black hat campaign or a gray hat type campaign. And the competition, the level of competition, has a lot to do with which path you take. Now, one of the big decisions you need to make with a black hat campaign is, am I going for a churn and burn type approach? Or am I going for a long-term investment approach? And what I mean by that, churn and burn is a common phrase in our industry that basically means you are setting up listings that where you know Google is going to suspend them eventually. You know they're not going to survive. And so basically, you're going to set up as many as you can, as fast as you can, and it's going to be a continual process of setting up campaigns to replace the ones that get suspended or deleted or filtered or whatever happens to them. You are going into it knowing that this is the game that you're going to play. And I'm in some niches like this myself where we're just constantly setting up new listings, and we don't stress out about it when listings get suspended because that's just part of our strategy, and we've already figured that in to our calculation of what kind of return are we going to get on our investment. And as long as we're continuing to be profitable, given all the costs of getting these listings up, then it's worth continuing to do it. Now, the opposite approach, which is still in the black hat world, is the approach of doing a long-term investment in listings. And this would be more in a niche where you are, where Google isn't watching the niche very carefully. It's not, and this is why this is under the category of knowing your competition. Because if it's a category where you don't have a lot of competitors doing black hat type stuff, then it's worth doing a long-term investment, because if it's not heavily spammed, if the market or the niche that you are targeting isn't heavily spammed, hardly anyone is doing spam, and I'm in some niches like this, hardly anyone knows anything about Google Maps actually, and in a couple of our niches, people don't even claim their listings. They don't even know anything about Google Maps at all. And in an industry like that, there's not much of a risk of Google suspending your listings, because spam hasn't reached like this amazing annoying level like we've seen in some of the markets like Locksmith, where there's just so many out there. It's annoying to everyone involved, including Google, including the end user. And that's a churn and burn market. I mean, Google's watching it heavily. Everyone's spamming it. There's a high turnover. Listings don't survive. That's churn and burn. Investing is like a low. It's under the radar, and spammers haven't discovered it. Google isn't watching it very carefully. Your competitors aren't setting up fake listings, and that's a great market for doing a long-term investment. And you can see we have a process map set up here where you can kind of see what you would do if you went down the track of doing a long-term investment in your listing, which means it's worth doing a citation campaign and getting a lot of citations out there. It's worth making sure you're able to claim the listing. It's worth setting up a website. We can see that on bullet point 2 here. Setting up a website would be something you would only want to do if you're going down the investment route, because a website takes time, it takes resources, you have to host it somewhere, you have to have content for it, you have to register a domain name, which costs money. Even if you have some sort of free hosting, you're still going to have to register the domain name, and that would be a long-term investment strategy. And again, I'm in niches, I'm in markets where it's worth doing this, because the listings last for a very, very long time, if not indefinitely. And if you're careful, they'll never be flagged or suspended as a fake or spam listing. And so you really need to make a choice about that as far as the competition. And the best way you can figure that out is just by looking at the competition level. You can use my free software to do that. And if you don't know where to get that, you can ask it here in the members area. We can give that to you. But we have competition analysis software that works specifically for maps, for Google Maps and Google Local, where you can go in and see your competition, who's out there, are they fake or real, or is it heavily spammed or not. You might even be able to just do it just by doing a quick search. And seeing who's out there for different cities, who's setting up listings for different cities, and do they look like they're spam or do they look like they're real? Are they claimed or not? What's the competitive landscape look like? And you really want to decide that before you figure out what path to take as far as the general strategy for your campaign. Now you might get out there and see, well, everyone is like doing churn and burn, and on a day-to-day basis, I see listings coming and going. I see a lot of listings that look like they're in some sort of process of being suspended, or I see people using like the same business name for 500 listings. There's all types of stuff going on like that. You want to see are everyone's listings claimed? If everyone's listings are claimed and verified, then that's a especially if they're spam, if they're fake, then that's a really competitive market. You're not going to be able to just throw unverified listings out there. You're going to have to claim everything. Or you might see, wow, nobody knows anything about maps. You're going to take a look at it and say, wow, these people have no idea what they're doing. It's a bunch of, maybe old school guys or whatever that really don't know anything about the internet or Google or Google Maps or anything. And then you could pretty much pick your poison, churn and burn or invest. You could set up a bunch of stuff where you don't even bother claiming it. You could invest deeply in listings, like 50 good listings, and you'll rank. But you see what I'm talking about? You really need to figure out what your competitive landscape looks like in order to figure out what to do. And that's why I encourage people to don't set up a website right away. One of the other things you need to think about with the niche is, what is the industry and niche history on Google Maps? And what do I mean by that? A great example, a blatant example of this, is the locksmith industry. Locksmiths were some of the first Google Maps black hat operators. Back in the day, I don't know if you remember or if you were around back then, but like in 2008, 2007, when Google Maps first was coming out, they had almost every street corner of every city had a fake locksmith on it. And it was literally impossible to find, almost impossible to find, a real brick and mortar locksmith just buried in the sea of red dots. Back then on the map, it was red dots. And if you did a search for locksmith on Google Maps, your map was completely covered with red dots. It looked like Google Maps had the measles. And there's a long and sordid history to the locksmith industry on Google Maps, including lawsuits, police impounding locksmiths' cars. There's all sorts, locksmiths scamming people. There's so much out there, and this niche has a ton of history. You don't want to get into that niche unless you really know what you're doing and what you're up against, and you want to do some research there. Now, you might say, wow, I'm brand new, I don't really know the history, but you can just ask us. That's why we're here in the members area. Just ask, hey, I'm thinking about getting into this niche. Do you know anything about it? Is that one? Have you heard anything about it? I've been around since almost the very beginning using Google Maps to generate leads, and I've seen almost everything. I do sometimes get into some stuff that I never saw before, but it's very rare. And so you can just ask us here in the members area. We can let you know, wow, that's really not a niche for the beginner. Or if you're not a beginner, we could give you the history on it. But you want to know, what is the history of this market? You want to know, have there been any legal issues in this market? Some industries have some very intense government regulations surrounding them, and some of them, some operators on Google Maps have gotten into deep water because they got into a niche with a lot of legal hoops that they were supposed to jump through. They didn't jump through, and they got spanked, not just by Google, but by the law. And so these are the types of things that you really want to know, the history. The niche history has a lot to do with how strict Google is. And for whatever reason, some niches have been much, much more heavily spammed than others. And sometimes I laugh about it because I don't always understand why some niches have been picked as like the quintessential spam niche, like a locksmith. But there are other niches like that, and the history of that niche on Google Maps, how long has this niche been exploited? And specifically with Google, what is the story? That has a lot to do with how strict Google is going to be, how easy it's going to be to set up listings, and what strategy you're going to take. If you're going to do churn and burn, if it's even possible to do a long-term investment, and if you do a long-term investment, what's that going to take? So getting the industry and the niche history is really important as well. Then lastly, the need to scale and when to scale. This is another really important question, okay? Because in general, let's say if you're getting into a churn and burn type niche where you have to, it's a constant game of setting up new listings, you're going to need a whole different set of tools. If you're scaling and you're doing like 300 or 1,000 or 3,000 listings across the country, you're going to need some different tools than if you're doing, like, say, 10 listings across the 10 largest cities in the USA. 10 listings is not a large scale operation, and you can even do that yourself just manually. But 1,000 listings, 2,000 listings, or even a churn and burn where you have to constantly be putting up listings, you really need to know how to scale. And there's a whole different set of tools and techniques needed. Now, we're involved in both. We're involved in the smaller, more boutique niches where really you're going to do best if you just target 10 listings, 10 top cities, and that's it. And we're also involved in the large scale operations with thousands of listings. And I can help you a lot with knowing whether to scale or not. All you need to do is ask. And ask, is this the kind of niche where I'm going to need to scale big? And really, it has a lot to do with the competition. If there's like zero competition or very little competition, sometimes all you need is one claimed solid listing with a solid website, even if it's not a real location, and you can be number one for everyone searching in New York City for that specific niche or that keyword. And sometimes the only way you're going to rank in some niches is by setting up so many listings that you're basically relying on mobile traffic, where you're relying on the fact that if someone is looking on their mobile device, that you're going to try to get so many listings up that one of your listings has a good chance of being the closest to their GPS location when they search. And you're just not going to be able to rank, you're not going to be able to hit everybody in a big city. You're only going to be able to hit small pockets around each listing that you set up based on the GPS location or their IP address. And so that has to do a lot to, so you have to do some of that research. That's, again, competition level when you're trying to figure out whether to scale or not, and how big a scale operation do I need to get into to actually succeed in this market. We've done both. We've done listings where it was so easy, really we only needed to put up a few, and we were able to get viewed by anyone in a big city like New York would search, and ours would be the only one out there. We've also been in operations where really the only way to win would be to have so many listings that you were just relying on the fact that people are, when they're searching from their mobile device, your listing was going to be the closest one to them geographically, and so you're going to rank. And by the way, if you're doing churn and burn, a lot of times you don't even need a website. If you're doing one of those large scale operations where you're purely depending on ranking according to GPS location, A lot of times you don't even need a website for those because you're not trying to beat the largest big brand in that market. All you're trying to do is be close to as many people's mobile devices as possible with your listings. So again, you can see how really figuring out the market and the competition level has a lot to do with what type of listing you set up and how much investment you do in each listing. And just a couple more notes that relate to this. I see people make this mistake a lot. Don't waste a lot of time and energy before knowing that a listing will survive. And this is especially if you are new to the Google Maps or Google Local arena and you don't really know the lay of the land. I really encourage people just to get out there and start trying to put some listings out, and just without doing a lot of back-end work, just put the most basic listing out there that you can and see if it even survives or if you're even able to do it. Because if you are not that creative with your market choice, your niche choice, and you just pick what everyone else picks, it's likely your listing won't survive without some additional knowledge. If you're real creative and you can find, there are a ton of under the radar markets. I was just looking at one the other day that I'd set up that is a totally under the radar market. I have a listing out there. There's no website. It's number 3 and it gets like 30 calls per month, totally under the radar. And again, I'm not going to make $10,000 on this one listing, but 30 calls a month, $20 per call, is a decent for one little listing that didn't take that long to set up, and doesn't even have a website. And so getting it out there can really let you know, did I hit an under the radar type gem here, or is this one of those cutthroat markets where I'm not going to be able to get my listings to survive? And this is really important because I see some people, they're like, oh, I'm going to set up a website and let me make sure and get content for it, and let me make sure I have a good domain name, and I'm going to build this whole website out and get it designed, and I'm going to make sure my address is on every page of the website, and then I'm going to call a few people and make sure I have some deals set up to buy these leads. And then they set up their listing, and Google won't even let them even just breathe in that market. There are some markets where even if you have a real website, a real address where you can receive their verification mail, they won't even send the mail to you. It's such a cutthroat market. There are some markets where they might let your listing go live, but it's just going to get deleted in like 3 days. Things like that. You need to know before you do a lot of work. You need to know. So don't waste a lot of time before knowing a listing will survive. If you do a little market research, do some keyword research, you figure out, okay, seems like there's some good profit potential here. There's some good keyword volume here. Just try putting a listing out there using our techniques and see if Google lets you do it. That will tell you a lot about whether you're going to keep going or not. And I do this all the time, this type of thing all the time, just for niche research. I'll just put something out there, just put a few listings out there and just see, do they rank? Do they survive? Does Google allow it? Does anyone call the phone number? And sometimes you can even put a listing out there without even a real phone number on it, just to see, does it even rank, or does Google even allow it? These are the types, it doesn't cost anything to put a listing out there, and just get an address, get a business name, invent a phone number with the right area code, and just throw it up there and see, does Google allow it? Spend a few minutes. So really important to do this before you spend a lot of time like working out your somebody to buy the leads off of you, or this type of thing, or setting up a whole big website. Just get it out there and see. And then second of all, consider your experience level. If you're brand new to this, ask us here in the members area, is this a market that a beginner has any chance? Because some markets, really, if you're a beginner, I don't want to be discouraging, but there's just very little chance you're going to survive. And there's so much low-hanging fruit still available in under-the-radar markets. There's really no reason to target the very difficult ones, especially if you're new. And so consider your experience level. If you're brand new, don't target a market right away where you're going to have to scale the operation to like 3,000 listings across the entire nation. Okay, just target an under the radar market. Just get your feet wet, and don't get in over your head. And again, you can kind of tell by doing some competitor research involving the things I discussed earlier. That's one way you can tell how cutthroat and how difficult is this market. You can use my software for that also and just see how powerful are the websites. Is everyone claimed? Have they claimed their listings or not? All the ranking factors, what do they look like? How difficult is it? And that can help you see, as a beginner, how am I going to do on this? And then you can also just ask us. That's why we're here in the members area, to help you. There is a ton of money still to be made on Google Maps. It's still very much a wide open area of search engines and of Google's universe. There's a lot to be done. Even if you're a brand new beginner, you can be very successful fairly quickly just with the tools we give you here in the members area, if you pick your market right and you match it with your experience level. And even if you set up a listing where it's just getting a few calls, 10 calls a month or something like that, as a beginner, that will teach you so much. Just getting it set up and picking a niche that's under the radar, you'll learn so much in the process. So it's really worth it to target a niche that matches your experience level. So hope that was helpful. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to post them here in the members area. If you want to just run a niche by us, you can post it in the members area as well. Don't send private messages. That's for private coaching. If you need private coaching, that's a separate thing. But anything you can post here in the members area, if we can let you know if the niche seems very difficult or if it seems easy, what the history of the niche is, and love to help you get started and get you in the right direction with your Maps project.